All right. Good afternoon. 1 month after the horrific events of 7 October, the Secretary General reiterates his total condemnation of the acts of terror committed by Hamas in Israel, for which there can be no justification. He will never forget the horrendous images of civilians being killed and maimed and others being dragged away into captivity. He reiterates his appeal for their immediate and unconditional release. The Secretary General remains extremely distressed by the killing of civilians in Gaza and the humanitarian catastrophe that continues to unfold there, with an unimaginable toll on civilians. He also reiterates his call for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire. More updates from the situation on the ground. The Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs tells us that yesterday 50 trucks, 50, carrying food, medicine, and health supplies, bottled water, and hygiene products crossed into Gaza from the Rafah crossing in Egypt. This brings the number of trucks that have entered Gaza through Rafah since October 21st to 526. And a reminder that still today no fuel has entered Gaza through Rafah. And just to flag that the government of Egypt has consented to the deployment of a UN technical humanitarian team to provide advice to the Egyptian Red Crescent Society on the delivery of aid to Gaza. The UN team will be based at Al Arish, which is the airport that services the Rafah crossing. Overcrowding in UN facilities in Gaza remains a major concern. Just to give you one example, in the Khan Yunis training center, where 22,000 displaced men, women, and children sought shelter, the space per person is less than 2 square meters, and there's one toilet for 600 people. Our colleagues at UNRWA said that the worsening sanitary conditions, along with the lack of privacy and space, pose great risks to the health and safety of those sheltering there. On the West Bank, OCHA tells us that since October 7th, 147 Palestinians have been killed, including 44 children. Those killings have been done by Israeli forces, and an additional 8, including 1 child, have been killed by settlers. We also continue to see displacement in the West Bank, with over 900 people displaced since the 7th amid settler violence and access restrictions. I can confirm to you, because I think some of you had asked me about the Paris conference, that Martin Griffiths, head of humanitarian affairs, will be there to attend the International Humanitarian Conference on Gaza. That conference is taking place on Thursday and being hosted by President Macron. For his part, Volker Turk, the High Commissioner for Human Rights, has started a visit to the Middle East to engage with government officials, civil society, and others on the human rights situation in the region. He's in Cairo today and is scheduled to go to Rafah tomorrow before traveling on to Amman in Jordan on Thursday. The High Commissioner has also sought access to Israel, the occupied West Bank, and Gaza. Our peacekeeping colleagues in the Democratic Republic of the Congo are telling us that they have launched a joint operation with the Congolese armed forces in North Kivu to secure the key regional centers of Goma and Sake. Operation Springbok, as it is called, is being undertaken in response. Yeah. Yes, exactly. Operation Springbok, as it is called, is being undertaken in response to ongoing clashes between members of the M23 militia and armed groups in the province, as well as advances made by the M23 towards Sake. UN peacekeepers and the Congolese armed forces are patrolling in key areas to protect the population and deter further advances by the M23. The mission has also established security perimeters near the Kichanga base to help protect some 25,000 civilians who have sought shelter in that base, and to facilitate the delivery of humanitarian assistance. Moving to Sudan, the UN Refugee Agency tells us that 4.5 million people have been internally displaced, while 1.2 million others have fled to Chad, Egypt, and South Sudan. as well as Ethiopia and the Central African Republic. That's almost 6 million people who have been forced to move since the fighting started in April of this year. UNHCR describes the unfolding humanitarian crisis as unimaginable across Sudan, adding that they are very concerned that recent fighting in the Darfur region has caused even more displacement, where many do not have access to food, shelter, clean drinking water, and other basic essentials. And sadly, at least 4 children are still dying every week in White Nile State, as essential medicines, personnel, and supplies are lacking. And a reminder that the regional refugee response plan for the humanitarian needs in all of these countries, neighboring countries that are receiving Sudanese refugees, is only 39% funded. UNHCR is appealing for $1 billion for 64 partners in 5 countries. A separate appeal for the humanitarian needs inside Sudan is only 33% funded. That appeal aims to reach 18.1 million people, and it requires $2.6 billion. Just want to give you an update on Nepal. The Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs says that 4 days since the earthquake, we continue to support the government-led response by providing shelter, food, and medical supplies. UNICEF says that almost half of those reported killed and injured in the earthquake are children. Most homes have been damaged, along with schools, health centers, and other infrastructure. UNICEF has also distributed emergency supplies to 2,000 families, including hygiene kits, buckets, mugs, waters, and purifiers, as well as tarpaulins and blankets. Further, 2 medical tents have been set up in Nalgad municipality for the resumption of health services. Additional supplies, including 667 sets of wash supplies, have reached Rukum West area, while 3,000 tarpaulins and blankets, as well as 2 medical tents, have been dispatched to the affected areas. Our friends at the UN Conference on Trade and Development today released a report calling on the global community to urgently address the critical financial challenges faced by the world's 46 most vulnerable nations. The least developed countries report warns that multiple global crises, the climate emergency, growing debt burdens, dependence on commodities, and declining foreign investments into LDCs have strained finances. The report notes that the upcoming loss and damage fund set to debut at the COP28 should be a game changer if least developed countries are among the main beneficiaries. Enough resources are available and disbursement is swift. But UN UNCTAD warns that their financing requirements go far beyond climate concerns, encompassing broader economic and social challenges. Senior personnel appointment. Today, the Secretary General is appointing Indrika Ratwate of Sri Lanka as his new Deputy Special Representative for Afghanistan with the UN Assistance Mission in Afghanistan, and Resident Coordinator for Afghanistan, and also Humanitarian Coordinator for Afghanistan. Mr. Ratwate succeeds Ramiz Al-Akbarov of Azerbaijan, to whom the Secretary General is grateful for his dedicated service. And he also recognizes the service of Daniel Andres as the ad interim Deputy Special Representative. Mr. Ratwate brings over 30 years of experience in the UN field. Just want to flag that at 2:15 this afternoon, the Department of Political Affairs and the UN Human Rights Office are co-organizing an event called Enhancing Quality and Effectiveness of Mediation Efforts Through Human Rights. It will take place at the Permanent Mission of the Republic of Korea. Rosemary DiCarlo, the head of the Political Affairs and Peacebuilding Department, will be there, as well as the Assistant Secretary General for Human Rights, Ilse Brandt-Keres. They will both deliver remarks. The event will explore how human rights can enhance the quality and effectiveness of mediation efforts, including through opening of space for political negotiation, strengthening ongoing peace processes, and reinvigorating stalled efforts. It will also be webcast. Ms. Lederer, since you're wearing the brightest color of anyone today. No, I don't think Colm knows where the microphone. I don't think he knows where the microphone is. Edie, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Steph. Springboks.
Springboks is eternal.
Eternal, right. Have you been able to get any answer to the question I asked yesterday about the total number of children and civilians that the UN was saying that it was about two-thirds of the those killed were women and children. Is that figure still holding up?
Yeah, I don't have any more details than I had yesterday, but I will try to get more.
And while you're trying to get some more information, can we get an update on what's happening with the deployment of the Kenyan police contingent to Haiti?
I mean, I can try to give you information, but you really will have to speak to the Kenyans because they will have the most up-to-date information. But I will see if I can get anything on my end.
I'll probably be back with something
I
else.
will look for you. Amélie, then Maggie, then Deji.
Thanks, Steph. Do you have any update on the MINUSMA convoy that was attacked so many times on his route?
It continues to move. We will confirm its arrival once we're able to confirm its arrival. Maggie, then Deji.
Steph, on Monday, Prime Minister Netanyahu indicated that Israel would reoccupy physically Gaza in some form when the fighting ends. What's the UN's reaction to that?
Listen, there were a lot of things said in that interview. Our position remains the same, that we want to see an end to this operation. We want to see a humanitarian ceasefire. And the civilians of Gaza should be able to reclaim their lives and control over it.
But there's been a lot of talk recently now about the day after. So what's the UN's vision of the day after?
Well, our long-term vision remains that of a two-state solution, but there are, of course, a lot of discussions going on in many places about what the day after in the more medium term will look like. But that's what I have to share with you at this point. Deji.
First, to follow up on the numbers of the trucks. I think the number from the UN is actually a little bit different from the numbers of the Red Crescent in Egypt. They said there are 93 trucks today, when you mentioned it's 50. And that brings the total of the trucks for them to 569. And you said 526.
I know what I said, or at least what I was told to say, and what I tried to read, is that yesterday 50 trucks went in.
Okay, so they got probably new.
The fact that the Egyptian Red Crescent is ahead of us, given that they're there and they're the main operator, is not surprising.
Okay. On the humanitarian issue in Gaza, I'm just wondering, because it's been reported that the Israeli military has already entered the Gaza city. And it's been reported that there are still 900,000 civilians in the Gaza city and the northern Gaza area. Does UNRWA has the access to that area? Because
as we've said, we're not able to deliver the services we want to deliver to those who remain in the north. A number of our on-staff members did stay behind, but the access is not what we want it to be.
And the WAM, the Emirates news agency, reported that they are trying to establish a field hospital with 150 beds in Gaza. I think the permanent representative of the UAE said this at the stakeout yesterday. I saw what she said, and I think we welcome every help. How would that work?
Well, I think that's a question you have to ask them. They obviously that'll demand a level of coordination with a lot of different players.
Okay, one last question. This question is concerning another treaty. Russia withdrew from the Treaty on Conventional Armed Forces in Europe. Right after that, NATO condemned this decision and said they will also suspend the operation in response. And actually, the U.S. has already, I think, done that. Any comments?
Let me get you some language on that. I haven't seen that particular report. Benno.
Thank you, thank you, Steph. So you started with Gaza and the 1 month of escalation of the violence there, and as you know, the SG faced pretty unprecedented pushback and also support for his words that the Hamas terror didn't happen in a vacuum. Would he use these words again?
The Secretary General is not in any way stepping back from what he has said at many different occasions in the last month, whether it's here, whether it's in the Security Council, whether it's at the stakeout. And I think the day after he used that expression, he spoke to you in very direct terms about what he had said, but in no way should any of this be interpreted as a walk backwards.
And therefore I'm asking, because he said he was shocked how it was interpreted. So maybe he is like thinking he should not use these words again because they were misunderstood.
Well, he had used them before. Let's go to the screen. We'll go to Abdelhamid, then Mushfiq. Okay, well, Mushfiq, you go first then.
Thank you, Stéphane. Bangladesh regime has rejected the Secretary General's calls to stop violence and excessive use of force detention. As the ruling party secretary has said, UN is useless and has no other role in the world except to say some good words. So what is your position as over 8,000 opposition protesters have been detained and people got killed every day by the police?
Well, I mean, criticism of the UN is not new, and I think it's been framed in different times. And my question to you is also always what part of the UN you're referring to. On the situation in Bangladesh, I would refer you to what we've been saying for the last week, if not more, expressing our concern at the mass arrests and the general atmosphere. Stefano.
Thank you, Stéphane. A question about an agreement announced by Italy with Albania. What does the Secretary General think about these centers, about Italy's announcement of the deal with Albania to create migrant processing detention centers?
Well, I mean, we are not a party to the agreement. UNHCR is not a party to the agreement. We spoke to them this morning. They haven't been informed or consulted on this, so we have no comment to make, except to say that any agreement of that nature should fully respect international refugee law, and of course UNHCR and others remain ready to work with all interested parties.
But is the Secretary General concerned about
Well,
this kind of
I
agreements?
can't express concern about something that he hasn't seen. So I don't know what else to tell you. Miriam, and then Maggie.
Thanks, Steph. As you know, the deportation of Afghan refugees continues from Pakistan. What do you hear from your office in Pakistan, and how worried is Secretary General regarding this matter? As you know, there are so many activists, women's rights activists, who are residing in Pakistan waiting for their cases to be processed to get somewhere safe. If they get deported to Afghanistan, they will face prosecution. What do you hear from Pakistan and also Secretary General?
Well, I mean, our colleagues in UNHCR are in direct contacts with the Pakistani authorities. We're extremely concerned about the events, about the mass movements of people, especially going back to Afghanistan, where I don't have to tell you, I mean, I don't have to paint the picture for you, and the high risk, especially as you mentioned, human rights activists have, and women's rights activists have. It is essential that the protection that people are entitled to be afforded. Maggie.
Steph, back to Rafa for a second. We haven't seen in the OCHA updates any more evacuations, medical evacuations of Palestinians to Egypt. It was just that initial group of 81 and 5.
If we have anything to report, we will. I mean, I think
So they haven't been
we know
happening?
they've been not to my knowledge.
And do you know of any foreigners being evacuated, or your
No.
staff? You had the rotations.
No,
the first
our
group.
rotation, whatever rotation we were able to do was done in small numbers.
So do you know why it like started and then stopped abruptly?
I mean, I think you have to ask those people who hold the keys to the gate.
And do you have any information on the ambulances that did leave Gaza not being allowed to re-enter Gaza?
No, but I can ask.
Okay.
Okay. Abdelhamid, and then we'll go to our guest.
Me, Stéphane?
Yes, I can.
Do you hear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. In the statement of the Secretary General, he started always with condemning what happened on 7th of October. And when he talked about what happened in Gaza, he expressed he is distressed. So killing 10,000 civilians, including 4,000 children, he says he's distressed. But talking about what happened in October 7th, always he uses the word condemn and label it as terrorist operation. Why?
Abdelhamid, with all due respect, I would encourage you to go back and read the body of all of the statements the Secretary General has made in the last month alone. Abdelhamid, let me finish.
Let me continue.
Let me finish. Go back.
Go ahead.
Go back and read the body of the statements of the last month. As I answered Benno, he doesn't walk away from any of this, of anything he said. He has condemned the killings, notably in his remarks on the 24th of October in the Security Council. Okay.
My second question.
Yes, sir.
If you.
No, go ahead. Go.
Yes, okay. In his statement yesterday, for the first time, he mentioned that the Palestinian militants using civilians and as a human shield. Isn't he borrowing the narrative of the Israelis? That's the first time he said that. Why he said that?
Look,
How he can prove that?
The Secretary General is, in this context and others, is often accused of following the narrative of one side or another. Everything that we say is based on information that we have and that we feel confident in using. Okay, I will go get our guest, Dr. Natali Khanum.